Layoffs happen fast. Welcome to another Ask a Dev Thoughts conversation. My name's Kevin. Today we're going to be talking about layoffs. I have been laid off a few times in my career, as well as fired once. Although being fired, that was in high school, and it was because I skipped work to go take the SATs. So that's a whole other story. But the point is, I've been through this a lot. And today we're going to be talking about some of the things that I do to navigate this crazy train. Now, I want to be real. This is a tough love conversation because I believe in the dream. I chase the dream. I think you should chase the dream. I think it's entirely possible, but I'm not here to give you a spoonful of sugar. I'm here to talk to you about some of the things that I do and how to survive while you're chasing that dream job. And these ideas are generally going to apply across multiple disciplines and hopefully even different industries, because I've worked in various industries throughout my career. Now, the overall theme for the talk that we're going to be having today is not scared, but prepared. And with that, part of not being scared is because we are prepared, because we've done the preparation. So within this, a lot of it is going to be about 3 different types of preparation. So the 3 different types of preparation we're going to be talking about is knowing the game, being prepared, and a little bit of financial literacy that I picked up in later years. So with that, let's hop into a little bit of backstory and knowing the game, because if we don't know the game, how do we know the rules? How do we play? So let's go with that first. So when I first started out, I gave up a multi-year career as a software electrical engineer, working at a Fortune 500 company with stock options and all kinds of benefits and everything that you're supposed to do from a traditional job standpoint, to give it all up to go work the night shift loading tape drives effectively as a digital janitor. And I loved it. And my dad thought I was insane. He was completely livid. He could not believe I was throwing away this very successful career to go make basically minimum wage loading tape drives. The thing was, at the time, the software that we used in order to create all of these 3D movies and everything, this is back in the 90s, it only ran on SGI, and it cost something like $50,000 a year. So if I wanted to learn the software, I needed to get into a studio that had the software. So while I was working the night shift, during the days, I would spend my days as a permanent fixture in the training department, learning all of the software. And if you ask anybody who worked with me at the time, they basically would tell you I was in the studio 24/7. The reason for this was I was completely convinced that at any given moment my contract would be up, and that would be it. I had a 6-month contract, and so I thought I had 6 months to learn everything I needed to learn to show them or the next studio that they wanted to keep me or that I could do the job. And I didn't understand what I was getting into. I didn't know the game. So let's talk a little bit about the game and what I've learned over the years working in various aspects of film and game. So one of the things that I would say is worth understanding is the difference between contract-driven work and IP-based work. And what I mean by that is when you're working on a project that is visual effects driven, as a great example, generally speaking, there's a production company, they've gone out, they have a movie they want to make, and they need a bunch of effects done. Some production companies have their own VFX shops, but a lot of times they hire that out. And the way that work gets hired out is it gets hired out to the lowest bidder. Not always. Sometimes it's hired out to the people who could actually do the work, but generally speaking, it's a lowest bidder thing. And so there used to be this like phantom producer quote that would circulate around: they haven't done their job unless they put the VFX shop out of business, which I know sucks to hear. But that's kind of the way it went. And it was crazy how tight the budgets were. Through a combination of not being able to budget, not being able to control clients, things being tight, etc. I literally watched studios take money from the next movie to pay for the current movie. Basically borrowing from Peter to pay Paul type stuff. And so as a result of it, margins were super tight. And I remember there were even times where you would get paid on payday and everybody would rush to the bank because depending on who got to the bank first, the last check might not clear. Like, that's how tight things were. And so the reason I've described that is because that's that was like a contract work base, and it exists in games as well. There are studios that have an idea and they hire out a contract work to do it, and it's a 2-year gig and you have this much time and money to do it. And what I want you to recognize is, if you want to go work on Lord of the Rings, or you want to go work on The Matrix or whatever, you are probably going into a contract work umbrella, if you will. Now let's contrast that with you own your own IP. And what I'm talking about there is a place like DreamWorks or Disney. So when you own your own IP, and actually on the game side, I would say, whether it's you own your own IP or you have a very strong financial backbone. So for example, if you're Epic Games, you've shipped Gears of War, you have the Unreal Engine, you have Fortnite, generally speaking, you are in probably a much more stable environment. Blizzard's another great one, Riot Games is another one. These are all big companies, Valve, they all have their backbone bread and butter that lets them experiment and try different things. That is a much different environment than the contract work environment. So the other thing that I didn't understand when I broke in was, it seemed like everybody was getting fired all the time, but that really wasn't what was happening. There was very much a nomadic nature to the business, but it was actually driven by the artist, and it was project and visionary driven. And I didn't understand it at first because I'd been brainwashed into the go work at one company for 20 years, retire, etc. And so it took me a second to wrap my head around it. And basically what it was people went to Sony in order to work on The Matrix. And then when they were done, they wanted to go work on Lord of the Rings because that was one of their dreams. So they all left to go to New Zealand to get a chance to work on Lord of the Rings, or their favorite director, the person that, was their inspiration, is making a new film up at Disney or wherever it was, and so they would all try to go get on that. So there was this very nomadic nature that I didn't really understand, and so a lot of what I thought was instability was actually artist-driven, visionary-driven desire to work on a specific project or with a specific team, for example. So that's one interesting thing. We already talked about the lowest bidder bit. Another thing that's worth mentioning is, in all of these environments, but especially in the contract-driven environments, at least from the standpoint of it happens faster on the contract side, if there is no project, it doesn't matter how good you are. You are an expense. You are a cog in this machine, and they cannot carry you forever. Now, in some cases, they might try if you're really, really good, but the number of people who they carry over for indefinite periods of time, it's pretty low. So if you're going into that, you have to know that's coming. And mentally, if you're prepared for it, you're not going to be as shocked by it. And we're going to talk about a little bit of stuff for preparation here in a little bit, but that's one thing to think about. But it does even happen on the more you own your IP stable side. So let me give you a great example. DreamWorks had figured out the magic recipe. And I don't even know if they realized that they had done this or if it was purposeful or not, but there's a thing that happens with the cyclical nature of making a production. For example, film. Let's use film as an example. Animators start animating, and as they finish the shots, basically there's no more work for them to do, and then the lighters and compers start working and putting it all together, and there's some overlap, etc. But what happens to all those animators? Well, a lot of times in a lot of studios, when the animation's done, your contract is up, you're let go. Well, DreamWorks did this thing where they had 2 movies. So the animators would start, and it was awesome. The animators would start, they'd get all the stuff done, and the lighters would start to pick up, and then as animators finished, what they would do is they would go on to the second film. And they'd start getting the second film set up, animated and up and running. And then as the animators were finishing, the lighters were finishing, and normally they would get laid off. Nope, they went to the second film, and the animators would go to the next film. So they were always running 2 films. Well, then one year, they started a 3rd movie. By adding that 3rd movie, they basically knocked the gyroscope out of balance. And inevitably, what ended up, and I remember this shocked everyone, inevitably what ended up happening was they had story problems on the 3rd movie, and they ended up laying off that entire crew. I remember thinking, it was large, it was like 20% of the company at the time. Everybody was shocked. They didn't know what to do. And so even in the stable environments, it still happens, okay? So there really is no specifically safe environment anymore. I'll give you another just anecdotally fun one. I was the director of engineering for a small company. I had 12 engineers on my team. And one day they came to me and they said, we don't have any more money. We need to lay off half of your department. And if we lay off half of your department, then we will have 6 months more runway that we can survive and keep the company going. This was a startup I was working at, and it was one of those classic making a run for the money, chase the money type thing. I think everybody needs to do this once. But anyways, so I spent a better part of a week letting go 6 individuals, having really tough conversations. Finally finished on Friday. I came to work Monday. I remember I walked up to the door, went to open it, and like almost pulled my arm out of socket because it was locked and chained. The company had shut down over the weekend because what these dillweeds had not told me was that me laying off my staff and us surviving for 6 more months was contingent on whether or not they got the funding. And they didn't get the funding. So I had gone through all of the psychological and emotional pain of letting people go, through all the conversations, just to walk in and not even have a company to go back to in the end. So there's literally, and also that Fortune 500 company that I was working at before I left, that went out of business. So I have many examples all throughout my career of why being prepared is important, no matter how stable you think things are. That's Fortune 500, that's startup companies, that's game, that's contract game, that's film, contract film, IP film, all of it. Everywhere I've ever seen, this is a possibility. So knowing the game is important. The other thing that I think is important about understanding the game is you are a cog in this machine. I know that sucks to hear, but I learned this pretty early on, but it was okay because this is a career of passion. But what I mean specifically, or what the thing that actually really struck this home for me was, we were working on Spider-Man 2, one of my favorite projects of all time. We finished the movie, and the movie grossed almost $1 billion worldwide. And my bonus for that movie was, well, one, I did get a chance to get a fun picture with Oscars, which was really cool because we won the VFX Oscar for that one. But my bonus for that film, when they made almost $1 billion, was a $99 DVD player from the Sony store. Now, at the time, I was pretty ecstatic. That was one of the larger bonuses I had ever gotten in my career because I didn't really understand quite what was going on yet. But at some point, it dawned on me that somebody had made $1 billion almost on this project, and none of the artists or VFX or anybody really had any opportunity to take part in that. And I remember thinking that was the first time that I was like, okay, if I ever start my own company, it is going to be different. And that gets into a little bit of the realization you are a cog in a machine. The idea that you are going to be able to make those kinds of changes as you're animating your shot or working on your VFX or whatever it is, it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough. So unless you're an independently wealthy billionaire funding your own project, or you're running your own company, which I think you absolutely should do. It's a great experience. It's fun to do. It's also challenging to try to make payroll. You do start to understand the flip side of what it means to be the cog in the machine as you go. But part of this is knowing the game. And this is the game we're playing. We are pursuing a career of passion. This is a free market industry, if you will. And the interesting thing about this industry is there are so many people that want your job that if you listen, the stories to break in, they often involve a insane amount of resilience and perseverance, trying over and over and over again, building relationships, etc. And I remember when I broke in, I was walking through the hallway and I saw the bins, like literally garbage bins full of demo reels and resumes, and thinking, no wonder it was so hard to get in. There are so many people that want that job that they have the luxury of you being a cog in a machine because they can find a replacement for you. I know that's awful to hear, but it is true. And even if you are the best of the best, there are people out there who are pretty amazing as well. So once you know that though, we can prep for it, and we can say that's cool because I still get to work on amazing films or games or whatever it is, and I can chase this dream. And you can actually make an amazing career out of this. And I know this because I literally gave up everything to go work the night shift, to work my way up, to chase the dream. So this is not meant to discourage you. This is meant to explain to you a couple things about knowing the game. I think there's one other thing I would say about knowing the game is early on, you're just going to be excited to do the work because you're just so excited to do it. And eventually you're going to start to want to put your own creativity and thought into it because you're a creative, for example. At some point, you'll probably wake up and realize that you're not making your film. You are helping somebody else make their film. So their calls, their creative decisions, you're trying to satisfy those. And if you try to do your own thing, you're going to find yourself at odds with the production or what's being done, and things will not go super smooth or swimmingly for you. So with that, knowing the game is important. And now that we know the game, we can talk a little bit about being prepared because we know what's coming. So let's hop into talking a little bit about being prepared. Okay, so now that we know the game, being prepared is literally, a lot of it comes from my dad. So in my previous careers, he just drilled it into me. Update your resume every 6 months. And the reason we're doing that is because we know that we might be in a contract job. That one's easy. But when you're working in a bright future company, they have all the cash in the world, everything seems amazing, there's a lot of things that can happen. They might spin up a third project. Or your boss, you might get a new boss and you're miserable at work. You never know what's going to change. So keep your resume up to date every 6 months. Just do it. And whether it's 6 months, 4 months, like every quarter, or 3 months per quarter, just make sure it's up to date. I did it every 6 months. And that does a couple things. One is if things go sideways, you're already ready to go. You will be able to hit the ground faster than the wave of people who are also potentially getting laid off. So that's one. Two, by keeping your resume up to date, the other thing that he would also say is go on the interviews. Take an interview. Every 6 months or so, take an interview. And the thing that does is it does two things. One is it keeps you apprised of what is going on in the industry and what you're worth around the industry. We've talked about this before. And then the other thing that it does is it keeps you sharp. So because interview tactics change over time, you are going to be up to date just because you're actively interviewing. And you don't have to be deceitful about the interview. You can say, no, I'm totally happy with where I am, but I was just curious of what you all had going on, etc. Those kinds of things. But you kind of keep it going. Also, you can use that as a means to build a relationship with that recruiter. You can say, hey, we interviewed, but I just want to let you know I'm still happy with what I've got going on here. Here's my latest reel for you, just so that we can keep in touch. And you will find that relationship building helps you over time. But once again, doing that every 6 months keeps you sharp and fresh and ready to go. The other thing I will say about that is when you first start interviewing, one of the things that they'll say is, let's say you have 2 jobs. Let's keep it to 2. All right, one is your dream job. And one is, it would be nice, but whatever. Do the whatever interview first. The reason is you use that to practice. That way you're nice and sharp and ready to go when you sit down for your dream job interview. You've made your mistakes, you've gotten the jitters out, and you're ready for the dream job interview. If you're doing this every 6 months, it's like anything else. Repetition. You have 10,000 hours of interviewing, you're going to be able to command and control an interview in a way like no other candidate can. So that's one thing. Update your resume, do the interviews, be ready, and you will be able to hit the ground running a little bit faster. Now, the second part of this is really just an extension of the first part, and it just applies to more creative roles, and it is simple. In addition to updating your resume, update your demo reel. Don't wait until the project is over. Update your reel as you go. And the reason is, there are many reasons. Okay, one is you don't know how fast things will change. Right now you're thinking the future's bright, everything's amazing, I'm never gonna go anywhere. Then you get a new boss and the sky is darkened with ash type thing. So you never know what's gonna change. There could be many reasons why you might need to move fast. Now, another big one, especially from a creative standpoint, is when you finish a project, the waiting, once you're out of the studio, waiting till that movie comes out in a format that you can actually record and put on your demo reel, it could take 6 months to a year. Because what you've got is you gotta wait till it comes out in theater, then you have to wait till it's done in theater, then you have to wait till it's on DVD so you can grab your shots, so you can what are you gonna do for that 6 months to a year? You're gonna tell people, oh, I worked on that movie, I can't show you what I did because I don't have... Everything you can do to keep your reel updated, whether it's a game, whether it is a film, whatever, as you go is highly important. Now, I have one huge caution about this. If you somehow mess up and your reel gets out and you have shots on your reel, whether it be gameplay animations or shots in a film that has yet to be released, and that stuff shows up on the internet, you're done. This is a very small business. So whenever I showed my reel to anybody who I was interviewing with, I never left a copy with them. I hand carried it in, I hand carried it out, and they were always cool about it. I can't leave it, I can't do that because the stuff's not out, I kept it private, etc. The cool thing is, a lot of the recruiters and teams, everybody understands this within the business, but it's just something to keep in mind. So you want to be very diligent about that as you're updating your reel as you go. Don't leave that thing in a place where somebody's going to get it and then your career's over type thing. So updating your resume, keeping your demo reel fresh. What is going to happen is you will be more relaxed, because if something does go sideways, if they start a third project, if there's problems with the writing, if you get a new boss, you will already be ready to go. You will be at the front edge of the oncoming wave of people who are potentially also going to get laid off, and you might have a better chance. So that one's pretty straightforward. There's not a whole lot of complexity to that other than just literally being prepared. Now with that, I want to talk a little bit about finance. So let's talk a little bit about financial literacy and what that's going to do for your peace of mind as you are going through this crazy adventure of chasing your dream job. Here we go. All right. Our third level of preparation that I'm going for is financial literacy. One of the reasons that this is important is because of the cyclical nature, at least the potential cyclical nature of what it is we do when we're chasing a career of passion, especially in an industry that has up and downs to it and release cycles, etc., is we need a means to be able to carry ourselves through the periods where we're not actually employed. Now, a lot of times this used to work out really well, especially in film, because we always worked overtime. And so you would actually be making way more than you normally would because you were making time and a half, sometimes weekend pay, and even double time and golden hour pay because the production was so busy. So you'd work for 9 months of the year, you'd bust your butt, get it all done, and then come May 4th, Spider-Man comes out or whatever film comes out, and then the studio would come to you and say, okay, we're good to go, we don't need you back till September. And you're like, this is great, summer vacation all over again, I've got all this extra cash because I was working overtime, I'm going to go travel the world, come back in September and start again. Sounds great. But a lot of times I watch this go poorly. So financial literacy is important. There are many, many different ways that you can address this last point. And I would say I did not have a very good understanding, or I was not financially fluent early enough. If I knew what I know now 10 years ago, I would be in a much different position. And so I'm telling you this because I think that if you can learn some of these things, you will be able to relax, take the jobs that you actually want, not because you have to, and you will also be way more at ease as you chase your dream job. So let's talk a bit about a couple of options here, a couple of mistakes that I saw as we went. Remember that scenario we were talking about, we're all making time and a half? Well, people got used to that. And so because our standard work week was 50 hours and we made overtime for everything beyond 40, people started living their lives on a 50-hour work week. So what happened was one day the studio, for two different reasons, one was financial and one was psychological, everybody was complaining that we worked too much. And so the studio was like, okay, fine, no more overtime. Dude, everybody freaked out. Why? Because they had been living their lives on a 50-hour work week. When you take out the overtime pay, that was a 30% pay cut. Now, most of us knew that was not going to last very long because they couldn't plan for anything. And so we were back working overtime within a few months, no problem. But the lesson is still there. If you can live below your means, meaning work and plan your life around a 40-hour work week, and everything beyond the 40, you sock away. All right? That's one thing. Live below your means. That way you're saving. You need to be saving. If you are not saving, the gaps are going to be difficult. So that's number one. You need to be saving. And if that means you're living below your means, that's one way to do it. Now, of course, if you're already an independently wealthy million bazillionaire, don't even listen to this section. You can just skip right out. But also, I'm not sure you'd be watching this. Second thing is, you need to learn to invest. You need to learn how to make your money work for you. And there's a lot of reasons for that. You need to understand debasement, invisible taxes. You need to understand leveraged investing. You need to understand the pluses and minuses of leveraged investments in things like homes. Why are homes successful? Why are they some of the most successful and highest earning potential in all of our lifetime? It's because it's a 5x leveraged investment. So the reason we want to learn to invest is because if you learn this, you can make your money work for you, and then it doesn't matter. You have this nest egg of money working for you, generating income every month. You can take the job that you want on the film you want to work on with the director you want, even if it's not your full rate, because you want to work with this visionary director, because you have this investment strategy on the side that affords you the financial freedom, the financial independence to literally do what you want and chase your dreams. So I highly recommend. There are so many channels on YouTube on how investing works. The history of money is a great one to learn. Just learning the difference between fixed assets, liabilities, how debasement works, understanding proper taxes, all these things. It is worth learning some financial literacy, because it will literally afford you the ability to not only work on the projects you want to work on, but when things are tough, when there are gaps, you're not going to have to just rush out and get a job just to get a job. You will actually have the financial independence and opportunity to be able to be selective. Choose the job that you want. And if there isn't one, you're still going to be okay. You could potentially work in, work on your own stuff, for example, generate your own company, etc. Now, this is going to be very hard at first, okay? At first, it's going to take a lot of buckling down. You're not going to have a lot of extra. This is going to be very difficult. But you also, the other part about this being difficult at first is because you're young, you're thinking you're all-powerful superhero type stuff. Nothing can stop you. You can work 24 hours a week, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, get it all done. Everything's cranking, and you're not thinking. I've literally watched this happen. If I go back and reflect on what happened to me, I thought of none of these things. because not necessarily because I thought I was invincible, but because I knew that I was driven and I would be able to charge forward no matter what, because I had the drive and the work ethic to do that. However, there are a few things that happened along the way that made a pretty big difference. Health considerations is a big one. If you get hit by some kind of health scare, it's going to make that awfully challenging. So having this stuff set up so that whether it be a gap in work or hopefully never happens to you, but a scary health scare type thing or whatever, you won't have to worry about it because you plan for it. And I've actually watched this play out too in family planning. Young people, they're very excited to work on, at this cool studio with, all of the latest amenities. They never go home. They're in the office all the time. And then I've watched over a period of 9 or 10 years as those younger people grow up and their priorities change. They want to start a family, or they want more time for themselves, or whatever else it is. And then all of a sudden, being in that cool amenities-based studio with all the bells and whistles isn't as important as the time that they have at home, etc. So the point there is, as you go, learning about investing, learning some financial literacy along the way will afford you the ease of mind during the gaps and during the tough times, where you will actually have options that others may not. And as a result of that, you will be in a much better position. So, to wrap it all up, the biggest thing is go in eyes open. Know what you're getting into. All right? Know the game. Are you going to a contract job? Are you going to a production house? Are you going to one of these financially stable backbones? And you'll be able to plan out exactly what it is that you're doing. You know what? You're project-based. You absolutely would die to work with this director or on that game project. That's your dream project. So you're willing to sacrifice stability because of that dream. But don't go into that thinking it's going to be stable too just because. Go in eyes wide open. So know the game, eyes wide open. The companies, they're not motivated to... You literally are a cog. In my entire career, the only company that I've ever worked for, there's only been one company that I've ever worked for that seemed to understand the value of their people, and I didn't have to ask for a raise. They would just give me a raise. In my entire career, that's been 30 plus years of working. Okay? So, know the game. 2, be prepared. Literally be prepared. Keep your skills sharp in interviewing, networking, etc. And I'm not talking about a bunch of connections on LinkedIn. I'm talking honest, true connections where you've built up a relationship with the head of recruiting at DreamWorks or whatever. Or you've said, hey, I've been in touch every year. I've never really successfully been there. What kinds of things can I change? You've actually built a relationship. True networking, not LinkedIn clicks. All right? Resume, reel, prep, practice interviewing, etc. And then finally, learning to invest. Learning how debasement works. Learning how taxes work. Learning how compound interest works. Starting, maybe you start your own little small business empire and you've got, different small businesses that are basically funding this ability that you have to go off and chase this creative dream. So through a combination of those 3 things, I have found that has helped me through a lot of the times where layoffs are coming. I know they're coming, or I've been caught off guard and I had either stored up what I needed to give myself the time, or even simple as, okay, I know if that comes, this is the plan, this is what we're going to do, and we'll be fine from there. Obviously, more complicated later when you have more responsibilities, families, etc. I'm not saying that this is not challenging or any of those things, but this is a tough beat. It is a tough beat because you're chasing a career of passion. And in a career of passion, I don't see a lot of billionaires running around animating shots. I don't see a lot of billionaires running around creating cool VFX. That's not what this is. So this is also not a deterrent. I gave up all of that stuff to go chase this dream, and I have had a blast doing it. I don't think I would change any aspect of it, because of all of the things to do. Dude, this isn't a bad gig, right? Creative work, it's not a bad gig. Now, maybe it would have been cool to be a doctor, help save some lives, but this is not a bad gig. All right, y'all. Let me know what you think about this. As always, all feedback welcome and comments welcome. If you have any other tips for people to help them through, I know right now, and especially right now in the business, things are really tough. If you have any words of wisdom or ideas, go ahead and throw those out. As always, thanks for being part of this entire adventure. The best part of this adventure is of the community. I learn a ton from you all. And as always, I hope everybody has an amazing rest of your day. I will catch you on the next one. Take it easy.